Does the 5K to 9K set up a trust include the fee that the Bob's lawyer would charge?
Yeah, co-ops lawyers, if you want to go through them, that's a whole separate kettle of fish. But again, you don't need to go through that process if we're only concerned about asset protection, because the limited assignment is 100% binding on Medicaid.
And some people are asking, what if I don't have kids or a spouse? How can
You're going to live longer.
how can I protect my assets from nursing homes?
Yeah, so in the folders, and for those of you on the Zoom, I have this article on the website. I thought it was so clever at the time, estate planning and the single girl. I guess it could apply to the single guy as well. For women, regardless of our current marital status, we have an 80% chance of outliving our husbands. We have, a big chance of divorcing our husbands. We have a very big chance of the kids being too busy to help us later on. So for all intents and purposes, many of us will be very much like single people one day. And that is less scary if we say, what can I do right now? Including, how much money can I save and how productively can I invest it? And let me put advanced directives in place. And if I don't have a daughter or a son to name as my agent, we need to start cultivating a network of folks who can help us later. That could be a social worker, a clergy member, a good friend, someone, from a book club. And again, when we're dealing with an outer ring of folks, we want to put two people together so they can watch over each other. And you want to examine those elections frequently. Yes?
Can a single lady write her will or register by herself?
Well, how did that work for Aretha Franklin? Can someone write their own will? Yeah, technically, you can write your will on a Bounty paper towel. There was a case where a guy was having a problem in his kitchen that he kind of knew was bad, and he wrote his will on the inside of a kitchen cabinet. And I don't know what happened with that, but Aretha Franklin's homemade will was still in court 7 years later. Her estate was big enough, that all of those millions still left millions. But I would say that's in the penny wise and pound foolish category. You could copy my will and just swap out the names. So it would look beautiful. Yeah, it would look beautiful. But when it goes to court for probate and they see it was not executed under the supervision of an attorney, you go on the slow track. It's a sad reality.
That's credible.
Yeah, a sad reality. So I would not do my own will. On the other side of the spectrum, healthcare proxy, I think a lawyer should be ashamed of themselves for charging for a healthcare proxy. I was a co-sponsor of that law in the 90s, and it was designed to be DIY. You can't go wrong. The forms are on my website. Healthcare proxy, download it, 2 people witness it, you're good to go. Living will template on my website, change it up so that it comports, with your philosophical preferences, you're good to go. When it comes to the will, the power of attorney and the trust, I would not buy it off the internet. I would not do it myself. I didn't even do my own will.
Like for sale by owner.
Yeah, for sale by owner, bingo. That is the ultimate in penny wise and a pound foolish. They think they're a genius and they got a lot less than if they had someone who knew what they were doing. Yeah, really good. Yes.
And what about long-term health care?
Yeah, so long-term care insurance. It's a little problematic. I sat on the insurance committee for 14 years in the legislature, and a lot of the companies were mystified when we were not buying policies. In the 1990s, you couldn't turn on TV without these long-term care insurance commercials. The problem is, in New York State, they're able to raise the premiums. So if I buy a policy and I think I'm locking in before my next big birthday, they can still raise the premiums later on. So it's a moving target. The only thing I would recommend that you consider, sit with your financial advisor, you can get a whole life insurance product that has a rider for long-term care benefits. And this way, if I don't need long-term care and I die in my sleep one day, as I hope to do, the beneficiary still gets something. Whereas if I've been plunking down my, $5,000 a year premiums for 15 years and they ratchet the rate up so much, I pull out of the poker game, they win. They got all of my stuff, like at a roulette table. So it depends on the situation. Any last questions? Yeah.
So when you appoint a trustee to a trust, can you have co-trustees or individual trustees or both, or which is more beneficial?
Yeah, so individual or co-trustees, it depends on your situation. If you have a candidate who's a realtor, a CPA, someone who knows what they're doing, and you don't want them to have to deal, with their brother who's an artist or a musician, and he can't reach them, and it's very chaotic, then we want to have one primary, one backup. If we have two people of equally mediocre abilities, then yeah, let's put them together and hope that they have a professional advising them.
Did you say that the trustee and beneficiary can be the same person?
Can be the same person. And what I'm hearing is some memory of the law in the 1980s, where we had what was called merger doctrine, where a trust failed when it had an identical trustee and beneficiary. That went the way of the dinosaur.
So you can.
You can
be the same person.
And be the same person. And again, usually the person we love is the person we trust. Any final question? Yeah.
So what happens if you got the house mortgage in the trust and the renter dies? So the beneficiary need to pay the mortgage continue or what?
So if the homeowner dies and you have a trust?
Yes, and the renter dies.
Yeah, so we would normally say that the trust ends upon the death of the grantor, and then it would be upon the beneficiary to go see a banker and do their own financing. I want to bring up one last point, and it relates to investment real estate. What's the difference between a trust and an LLC? Well, you never want your primary residence to be owned by an LLC because you would lose your star property tax exemption. On the other hand, we don't want to put more than, say, 3 properties into this primary trust that I'm talking about, because if one crazy tenant successfully sued, then the other things would go down like bowling pins. So when we're dealing with like a 4th property, we want to consider doing an LLC, and then we would put some or all of the LLC membership units, we would have them owned by the trust. So you would have like a double layer of protection. You would have the LLC, and the LLC alone guards against garden variety liabilities. It does not protect against long-term care claims. It does not protect against divorce claims, and it does not avoid probate. You'd have to put the membership units into a trust in order to avoid probate and commence the running of this 5-year clock. Okay, so I hope I've given you some things to think about. To the folks who are still with us on Zoom, If you're a current client and you popped your head in to see if there are any changes in the law that would affect you, if you did your power of attorney prior to 2012, you want to update the power of attorney. If nothing else in your life has changed, then you're good to go. There's nothing that would have caused you to make an adjustment with the trust. So I just want to leave with the way the 5-year clock works is for every month you get under your belt, that's 1 month less that you'd have to privately pay $16,000 a month. So if I put my house in the trust today and I'm going along just fine for 4 years, and God forbid I need a nursing home, now my family only has to privately pay that one last year. So partial credit is, better than nothing.
The current cost is about 16,000 a month. Right now.
Yes, 16,000 a month.
And 10 years it would be
Yeah, it goes up like 8% a year.
really.
Which back to the long-term care policy, if you have a benefit of $400 a day, that's a pretty high benefit for a policy. But the real cost right now is $540 a day, and the real cost is going up 8%. And your benefit, you bought the inflation rider, that's going up 5%. So you're getting further apart as you go out.